Hey, Dr. C here. I'm going to talk to you today about immunizations. I think it's probably almost an annual thing that we do, but hey, we go through an annual question about getting your immunization or not. So let's discuss it again, get everybody up to date. First of all, I just want to give you a little background. Remember, a virus. What is a virus? A virus, submicroscopic. You can't even see it under the microscope. It's so small. It's smaller than your cells. All there is really is just a little piece of RNA or DNA and a protein coating. That is it. Now, it's that protein coating that makes a lot of the vaccines that are out there, because the vaccines will focus on one little portion of that protein coat that usually attaches to whoever the victim happens to be in order for the virus to get in. But remember too that viruses only can propagate in a host, in someone. They can't do it unless they infect someone, an animal, a human, whatever. Okay, that's the background. Now let's talk just for a brief moment. What's the difference between vaccination and immunization? Well, a vaccination is injection of, say, a killed portion of that virus or bacteria or whatever, or maybe just modified. In other words, it won't infect you, but you will get the immune response to it. That's a vaccination. Whereas an immunization, that includes what happens in your body. You begin to get your immune system fired up to produce antibodies against that foreign material. So that is basically what an immune system does. It identifies any foreign object or whatever, or foreign protein or foreign whatever, and it then generates a response to that. So that's the whole immune system. Okay, let's talk specifically about all of the things that are out there right now. We're in flu season now. Well, not quite flu season, but if you listen to all of the pharmacies and all, they're right into it because they got their doses in and they want to get rid of those doses as soon as they can. What about the flu vaccine, first of all? How do they determine, first of all, how to make that vaccine? Normally, what the vaccine does, it will select certain species of the flu that went around last year. Or, we're in the northern hemisphere, they'll collect data from the southern hemisphere, because that already has passed that flu season in the south, in the southern hemisphere. So they'll gather the data of which species were the ones that affected you and caused the flu virus. So that's how they determine it. How they name these viruses, basically, they name them according to the little proteins that are on the membrane of the virus, on that protein coat. And as far as flu goes, there are two, an H and an N. And so very typically what they'll do is they'll give you a particular variety of the viruses that are going to give you protection for that year. It not necessarily is going to give you protection. It's only the ones based on last year or southern hemisphere data. So if you get a new virus, forget it. You're going to wind up getting the flu. Not that you can't get the flu with the flu vaccine, but it's certainly going to be a heck of a lot less symptomatic. So how do they name them? H and N. The H stands for hemagglutinin, which is the name of that protein, and neuraminidase, which is also another protein on the flu virus. So it's species-specific naming of the types that are in the vaccine. Normally you will find either trivalent, in other words against 3 particular species, or quadrivalent against 4. 2A, 2 influenza A, and 2 influenza B. This year we're protected against 2 A's, 2 B's. The A's happen to be the H1N1. Remember when the H1N1 was a big deal 10 years ago? We had to do double shots that year. And H3N2. Those are the 2 A's. And there's also 2 B's. That's changed a little bit depending on the southern hemisphere viruses that they had this year. So that is the flu vaccine. Now there are several flu vaccines on the market right now. In fact, there's basically 6 different kinds of flu vaccine that you can get. The pharmacy, or even at St. Anne's, they get 1. And that's the one that they'll give you. Rarely do people ask for a particular kind of vaccine. And as I said, there's 6 different kinds of flu vaccine. There's the standard flu vaccine, which is what most people will get. And there's 3 companies that make the bulk of those standard quadrivalent or trivalent. Most of them are quadrivalent now, vaccines. Then there's a special, quotes, high-dose vaccine for seniors, people like me. High dose. Why is it high dose? Because it's 4 times. They have 4 times the antigen in that particular dose. And so you should get a stronger response. In actual fact, when they measured the response, it was only slightly, not even statistically significant, increase over the standard. But that's the high dose. Both of these, the standard and the high dose, are produced on an egg matrix. So they grow it in an egg environment. That doesn't mean if you're allergic to eggs that you can't get it. You can, but you need to be a little more cautious, that's all. So what are some others that are out there, especially for seniors now, especially for seniors? Well, there's a high dose, but it has an adjuvant substance. Now, an adjuvant substance that's added to it will enhance the production of the immune system cells. What they use for the flu is basically, it's one of the oils anyway. I don't remember exactly. I think it's squalene oil. I never heard of the damn stuff, but it's an adjuvant for the flu vaccine. And so that's one for seniors. Also, the seniors can have a cell-based production of the vaccine. In other words, they grow it without the eggs. They grow it in a cellular environment. So if you really are worried about your egg allergy, you can ask for the cell-based flu vaccine. And they can give that down to 6 months of age as well. And then finally, there's the recombinant. Recombinant. That's the one that's produced in the lab. It's not egg-based, and it is a very good vaccine for seniors. Usually it's roughly about 3 times the amount of antigen that is in the standard dosage as well. You have to be 18 or over in order to get that particular one. That's called Fluad. I got the Fluad last year. Had no problem with it. I didn't get the flu because, and I know why I didn't, because I was very careful to avoid the COVID virus. So that has made a big impact on the number of cases of flu that we see here in the Northern Hemisphere for the last 2 years, actually. But as usual, the CDC and, of course, the pharmacies and all, they go out and tell you, listen, you got to get your flu vaccine It's going to be a terrible year. Oh, God. How many times do they have to tell you it's going to be a terrible year? But that's what they tell you. When do you get it? When do you get your shot? Well, when you look at the data, when you actually look at the data, you see that there's two spikes generally of the flu disease. One spike occurs in December, and the other spike occurs late February, early March. So why do we need to get it early? Well, they tell you get it right away, get it right away. But you may not get the immune response lasting long enough for that second wave in late February. So I get mine usually about mid-October. And I would suggest to wait till mid-October. What kind should you get? Well, you ask. You gotta ask, first of all. What kind are you giving? What do you have? Is it trivalent or quadrivalent? Right now it's probably mostly quadrivalent. Do you want the high test dose? They probably have it. And if you want it, you get it. If you have any question of egg allergy, you ask for either the cell-based or the recombinant. No eggs involved in the production of that vaccine. Okay. I forgot to mention, there's also this year the nasal flu. So you don't even have to get a shot. Remember, last year they didn't allow the nasal because, remember, the year before that, they determined that it was only about 3% effective. That's pretty lousy. So don't worry about it. Seniors, you can't get it anyway because that's only for the kiddos. You actually can get it up to age 49. So you get the kids and all the way up to age 49 with the flu mist, the nasal. So if you're under 49 and you want to get it, you can. Remember, though, it doesn't have a great track record for efficacy. So just remember that. Okay, that's the flu. What about all this other nonsense that we're hearing now about COVID? Got to talk about COVID. What the heck? All right, that's the major thing. It's killing people still. Yeah, less numbers of hospitalizations. Yes, less numbers dying. Remember, the ones who still die are the seniors. Remember that. 93% of all the deaths in the United States from COVID are in people over age 55. Remember that. So when your kid goes to school and doesn't wear a mask, well, actually your grandkid probably, if you're a senior watching this, and they don't wear a mask, and they're hugging the other kids and doing what the kids do normally in school. And you got to think about it. How is the school ventilation? Have you ever asked the school officials? What is your ventilation system like? What is your protocol if somebody in a class has COVID? What is your protocol? And we're going to talk about that with monkeypox too. What is your protocol for cleaning as well as for surveillance if some kid in that class comes down with monkeypox? You got to ask the questions. They may not necessarily give you the right answer. You may be surprised. But don't be afraid to ask the questions. Okay, so we're talking about COVID now. Should you, right, the big question right now, should you get the new COVID booster? Well, when that was announced initially, recently, but initially, I thought it was a pretty good idea, especially given my age and given the risk of getting COVID. And you know, still, COVID, the BA.5 is still the most common one in the United States. Not as common as it was a month ago when they were developing this vaccine. And I want to tell you, there are other variants Omicron variants out there since the development of that vaccine. So the vaccine itself is called a bivalent. It has against Omicron BA4 and BA5. But the CDC insisted, because of good data from the original vaccine, that they mix that specific stuff with the original vaccine. So it's bivalent, the original and against BA4, BA5. I told you, first of all of a sudden now, it doesn't take long, we're getting new variants. We're getting a BA 2.75. We're getting a BA, we haven't gotten a 6 yet. And we're also getting a BA 4.6. Well, how is the vaccine against those? Well, they don't know yet. So, okay. So that's number one. Number two, did they test, like they did all the other vaccines that have come out, did they test them in humans? Number one, for the efficiency of the vaccine. Number two, did it have any major side effects? Well, the CDC accepted what the companies told them. They didn't test it. They didn't. They tested it in mice. So if you're a mouse, you probably want to get it. If you're not a mouse, you need to question it. I still am very ambivalent about this new vaccine. Lousy testing, number one. Number two, new variants out there already going up in numbers in the United States. I am still suspicious about it. And I myself got both of the vaccines and both boosters. I should be good. I don't know. We'll see. Time will tell, I guess. And I should tell you before we leave the subject. In South Africa, there is a new virus, a new one. And for the lack of any intelligence, they called it neo. They just give it the name of a neocon. Well, okay. We don't know yet, because they initially noticed this in bats in South Africa. They identified the sequence of the genes at the Wuhan laboratory. Oh, okay. We'll see what happens with that, quotes, new neocon virus. Okay. Let's go on from there. Let's talk for a moment about monkeypox. Okay, monkeypox. What about monkeypox? Well, that's a DNA virus, but you get it from contact, not from respiratory droplets. You get it from contact. You've got to be touching, in contact with one of the drainages from the monkeypox vesicles. Now, monkeypox, when you get it, you initially, after 2 to 3 days, you would come down with a little rash, just a reddish rash, usually on the extremities. In another couple of days, that's going to evolve into little vesicles, little fluid-filled vesicles. Those vesicles then cloud up, and now they look like a pustule, like a little pus-filled pustule. Then that breaks open and scabs over. So that whole sequence, scabbing over and all, that may take a week, up to 2 weeks, to completely go through that evolution. So that's the evolution of monkeypox. Contact with that fluid. Now that could be direct contact, person to person, could be contact with what the person was wearing, clothing, bedding, towels, handkerchief, whatever happened to touch that particular lesion and got that fluid on it. So, important to avoid contact. Important also to, if you don't feel well, don't go and contact anybody, number two. And number three, if you do come into contact with it, you need to quarantine. Now, those of us who got the initial smallpox vaccinations, we still have an immune response to monkeypox. So I'm not worried about monkeypox. Yes, I may get it, but it's not going to be very serious because I have the vaccine. So after 1972, nobody got the vaccine after that, because in 1972 it was supposedly eradicated. Smallpox was eradicated in the United States, and in 1980 it was eradicated worldwide. But since 1972, nobody here has gotten that smallpox vaccine. So the government did stockpile it. They've got it in their warehouse, and they have offered it to the people. Now again, our government doesn't learn from its previous mistakes. And boy, they make plenty of them, believe me. How did they not learn? Well, first of all, you remember when President Biden came on, we've got 1 million doses, we're gonna put it out there, we're gonna take care of this right off. We learned. What BS? A month later, when people who wanted the vaccine, where is it? Where is the stuff? Well, we have transportation issues and disposition issues, and that's that baloney. And then one of the geniuses in that government said, well, what we can do though, there's only 1 million doses, we can divide that into 5. We can take 5 drops from that immunization, the shot, and we can just dab it on the skin and just do an intradermal, a little pick over, just like you do the smallpox vaccination. No science to it at all. No studies to show that it was effective. That goes to show our government has learned nothing from the COVID vaccine. Isn't that something? So at any rate, what can we do about the monkeypox? Well, I mentioned to you, if you have a child who may be inadvertently, touching some clothing or whatever, and they get monkeypox, what is the protocol in a school? Should they be cleaning things a lot more aggressively if there is a case of monkeypox in that class, for example? Nobody knows so far. But somebody has to, okay? Ask the question. Don't be afraid. So monkeypox, when you quarantine for monkeypox, you have to do it for at least 3 weeks, because you can transmit the virus up to 2.5, 3 weeks at the outside. That's a long quarantine, 3 weeks, but that's what it is. So it's contact only. Now you can get it too from saliva. So if you're going to be French kissing someone, okay, you may get it if they got the virus. Okay. And you can also get it in semen too. If you have sex with somebody who has monkeypox, you could get it that way too. Although it doesn't seem to be a major issue at this point. Normally in this country, it's mostly white and black males who are getting the monkeypox. Male from the LGBTQ community. That may change, and it can. It certainly can change. Okay, so what else? Polio. We hear about polio now. Oh my God. Polio was supposed to be eliminated way back when the Rotary Club sent missionaries out to all of the countries. All their international Rotary clubs got doses of that polio vaccine, distributed it in every country, and supposedly knocked that polio vaccine out of commission. However, there were a couple of countries they could not give it. like Pakistan and Afghanistan, because the Taliban does not allow vaccines in their country. So that was smoldering. It was smoldering in those countries. Also, the most recent case that was noted in New York City, that particular case of polio, which happened to be paralytic, partially, fortunately, but paralytic, and only 1 in 200 people who get polio have the paralytic type. Then they looked at the wastewater, and they found it in the wastewater as predicted. Should you get the polio vaccine based on just that alone? If you've never had the polio vaccine and you're in a community that has even one case, but it does have positive wastewater, I would seriously think of getting the injection for polio. Definitely. So get that. Right now the kids all get it. They get 4 doses of polio vaccine before they even go to school. So the kids are pretty well protected. I know Massachusetts, over 90% of all the kids have had their polio vaccines and are fully immunized. So at any rate, that's the the monkeypox. We finally had one person die from monkeypox in the United States. Made the headlines, of course. But I don't anticipate any big deal from monkeypox. What other vaccines now should we consider? There are a couple, actually. First of all, pneumonia vaccine. We know that the seniors are much more susceptible to getting pneumonia, as are infants as well. And so we have pneumonia vaccines out there. We have 2 types of pneumonia vaccine. We have the Pneumovax, which covers you for 23 different types of pneumonia. And that's usually the encapsulated form of the bacteria. This is bacterial now, not viral, it's bacterial. Then we also give out a Prevnar 13 or Prevnar 20. And that covers the other types of pneumonia. Usually just the kids got it, because kids get bronchiolitis with this particular variety of Neisseria. Excuse me. And so the CDC recommended that the seniors get the Prevnar 20 as well. So those 2 pneumonia vaccines. Next year we'll have one against the respiratory syncytial virus. It's amazing. I didn't realize that seniors can get pneumonia from the RSV, the respiratory syncytial virus. Normally it's in babies, infants, but next year we should have a vaccine against that. I think something like 12,000 people died from respiratory syncytial virus in the United States last year. It was amazing to me that occurred. Well, we're running short on time. I got in at least some of the things that are on the mind of everybody right now. And don't throw away your mask. Make sure you keep something to sanitize surfaces. And make sure if you don't feel well, you don't go out. Remember also that the test that you take at home, the antigen test, is not as accurate with the new forms of Omicron. That doesn't mean you shouldn't test, but remember, it's not as accurate. So a negative test may not mean as much as it did a month ago before the new Omicron variants. Okay, that's Dr. C. I've talked enough today. I'm beginning to get hoarse already. Come in, see me again. This is Dr. C.